Start when? Now? Whoa, now that we're echoing.
Now.
All right, we'll try again. Welcome to the March Citizen Involvement Committee meeting. We'll start by having our Secretary, Dennis Anderson, do the roll call, and he will call out the neighborhood association. And if you're from that neighborhood association, just say your name and like Linda's here or Roy's here, and that way we'll know.
Okay, Kanema.
Linda's here.
Three Rivers, or Two Rivers. It's
VFW.
yes?
No.
No. Gaffney Lane.
Amy Willight is here.
Park Place.
Steve Van Haverbeek is here.
Hillendale.
Roy Harris is here.
Tower Vista.
Vern Johnson's here.
McLaughlin.
They are both absent. They have sent
Okay.
emails.
Rivercrest.
Karen Morey, present.
Caulfield.
Mike Mitchell.
Berkeley Hills.
Janice Morris is here.
Janice, that's in there. South End. Rivercrest.
Again?
Again, I'm just having fun. This is so many names. Thank you. Thank
My
you.
alter ego's here too.
We would like to welcome Janice. This is her first meeting that she is with us at. So if you have questions, just grab Linda that you're sitting next to or wave your hand and I'll be happy to answer them.
Right.
First up, we have, where am I? Presentation, Susie Peterson from Backyard Habitat Certification.
Do I need to turn this on?
It's on.
Or, oh,
Should be
it
on
sounds
right.
like it's on. Okay. Okay, great. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me here. My name is Susie, and I'm the program manager for the Backyard Habitat Certification Program. Has anybody heard of this program before? No, I see a few yeses and a few no's. So, okay, great. So this might be more detailed than some of you know and new information for others. So the presentation is PowerPoint. So for those of you sitting here,
They can see.
oh, you can
have
see.
it on our
Oh, you've got it
monitor.
on your computer. Okay, great. Okay. Yeah, so I'm just going to go ahead and get started. The Backyard Habitat Certification Program is co-managed by two local nonprofits. One is Columbia Land Trust. That's who I technically work for. Their main office is out of Vancouver, Washington. And they conserve land along the Columbia River and about 50 miles south and 50 miles north into Washington. So they are currently conserving about 32,000 acres along the Columbia River. And by conserving, I mean they either own it or they have conservation easements and they take care of those lands. So they help steward wildlife through those areas by keeping them kind of private and out of development hands. And so that's Columbia Land Trust. And then the second organization that co-manages the program is Audubon Society of Portland. And probably many of you are familiar with Audubon Society. They're a local chapter and they do a lot of local conservation work as well. They host lots of summer camps and find ways to engage individuals. So my cohort, Nikki West, works there. And she's not here tonight, but, and then let's see, do I have 10 or 15 minutes here?
15.
Christina, 15, oh, sorry, okay, yeah,
Okay.
15. And, okay, so I'll provide a little information on this. So the Backyard Habitat Certification Program was born out of a desire of local conservation experts to find a way to engage citizens to think about conservation in terms of their own yards or properties that they manage. And so, let's see, I think, okay, and the reason for that is that if you look at an individual yard, you might think, okay, well, there's not much there, there's not really much to do for wildlife, or there's not really ways to contribute to like larger conservation efforts. But if you look at it at a large scale, or if you kind of step back and look at it at a large scale, you can see how there are a lot of conservation projects happening around the region. And if you get enough small urban lots together, to think about these things and to take action, then really it adds up to be quite a big contribution towards conservation, towards contributing to larger conservation efforts. So this is kind of zooming into a neighborhood level. Let's see if I can use the little, yeah, if you look at the red, or if you look at the white box, that's a specific neighborhood. So that might be, let's say you're all neighborhood associations here. So we'll say it's Caulfield. If this is Caulfield right here, you can see that the green represents trees, and you can see that there's a little bit of canopy in here. And so those trees and those like miniature green spaces, if you will, do add up to contribute to the larger efforts. And then here's another example where if you look at, this is probably up in the corner, this is probably like a church or maybe a park, and you see all the green. So this is kind of a bird's eye view right here. If you're a bird flying into the area and you're like, oh man, I've been migrating from Mexico, I'm really tired, I need a place to land and find some food, you're gonna go for a space like this. Or you might look over here and see like a pocket of green and be drawn to that. So really it does make a difference in terms of supporting wildlife. One of the books that we encourage people to read in the program is a book called Bringing Nature Home. It was written by Doug Tallamy out of University of Delaware, and he says, in the past we've asked one thing of our gardens, that they be pretty. Now we ask them to support life, sequester carbon, feed pollinators, and manage water. And so that's what we're doing, is getting people to think about that. So our mission is to provide technical assistance, incentives, and recognition to small lot private property owners as they restore native wildlife, reduce pesticides, and manage stormwater at home. Oh, that's great, thank you. Together we are planting roots, creating habitat, and transforming the world 1 yard at a time. And to give you a little history, the program was created in 2009 it came out of a kind of a test project in the West Hills of Portland. There was a very small nonprofit called West Willamette Restoration Partnership, and they were restoring 2 of the parks there in the West Hills, and they had a volunteer group of maybe 5 or so, and they started realizing after they pulled a lot of ivy and Himalayan blackberry out of the park that they weren't really going to solve the problems that they were having at the park with the invasive weeds there unless they recruited the homeowners that lived around the park. And so they did that, and they created this kind of incentive program for the neighbors to pull ivy and do the same kind of work in their own homes. And it was really popular. People were really engaged in it. They were really excited to be supporting the park and to be supporting wildlife in that way. It was so successful that local conservation experts held a summit at the zoo to try to figure out how can we spread this around the area? How can we make it not just a West Hills project, but a bigger project? And that's where Audubon Society and Columbia Land Trust came together to launch this program. Initially, it was actually Three Rivers Land Conservancy. I don't know if anybody's here is familiar with that old organization. So anyways, they absorbed eventually into Columbia Land Trust. And then in 2009, we launched the program into Lake Oswego. In 2015, we launched into Gresham Fairview. Last spring, we launched into further parts of Clackamas County, including West Lynn, Milwaukee, Oak Grove, and Jennings Lodge. And then this spring, April 23rd is kind of our official launch date. We'll be launching into Oregon City, Happy Valley, Wilsonville, Damascus, Gladstone, and little areas in between those cities. And so we're very excited to be coming into Oregon City. We've already met with several city staff at the kind of director level, and they're really excited and engaged. So we've been getting a lot of support from city staff, and we're looking forward to having kind of an outreach campaign this spring. So you might be hearing more about this over your city newsletters or however you get information out. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of how the program works. So initially, let's see, who have we got here? Dennis, let's say you enroll in the program. You'd pay an initial fee of $35, And that's the only fee that we're ever going to collect from you. So you can be in the program for as long as you want, and we offer all these different resources, but we're only ever going to charge that upfront $35 cost. And the cost of each site assessment, so each time we go out to someone's yard, it's a value of about $350. And so we have a lot of grants and other ways of supporting the program so that we can keep it really accessible to people. We want anyone to be able to sign up regardless of their income. For that, you initially get about a 1-hour site assessment. So we'd come out to your house and we'd talk to you about what are your goals, what are your yard goals. Maybe you want to have a certain patch that's set aside for growing fruits and vegetables, but you have this little area over here that you'd like to make kind of like your wildlife corner. We would work with you on that and whatever your goals are to work on that little area. And so from that site visit, in addition to talking to you, we're also collecting information like what kind of invasive weeds might be in your yard, what kind of native plants are already there, are there ways that you're already processing stormwater on site or providing wildlife habitat. We take stock of all of that. We go back, we type up about a 4-page site report specific to your yard, where we kind of summarize what we saw when we were there and then offer some specific recommendations that you can take if you want to. And so that's the site report. Along with that, we also provide a resource packet, which is full of coupons. So we have about $75 worth of coupons in the resource packet. Those are for local native plant nurseries or for the books that we recommend. I think there are a couple others that I'm forgetting, but and there's a lot of information in these resource packets, and it's meant to just provide each person with a slew of resources depending on what needs they have in their own yard. We also host 2 native plant sales each year. We have one in the fall and one in the spring. And through those native plant sales, people can get steeply discounted native plants at about wholesale cost. And so that's a huge benefit because plants are expensive. And so that way we can keep the costs down as people are moving through the process. And at that point, it's really up to the individual to take ownership of their yard and put into effect the recommendations that we provide. We don't rush anybody. It's up to their, if they have a family and they're a full working family, they might need a little more time. They might need 2 years instead of 1 year. And so they just take their time and do what they can when they can. Once they are ready for certification, and they'll know that because we spell out specifically in the site report, like if you want to reach silver certification, these are the things that you would need to do. Once they're at the point where they're ready for certification, we send someone out to do another assessment and to check off the lists of like, okay, you met all these criteria, and then we give them this really cute sign and we congratulate them and we post their photo on Facebook and they're really happy. And so that's kind of the next step there. And along with that, we offer benefits totaling about $120 once they get certified. We kind of send them a little gift, little gifts because they've worked pretty hard usually at that point to get there. And then certification is good for 3 years. They can upgrade. So if they get silver, they can upgrade to gold or to platinum whenever they want. But each certification is good for at least 3 years. And at that point, they renew and they fill out a questionnaire saying that they're still holding to all of those requirements. So that's a synopsis of the process. I'm gonna kind of go quickly through these. I haven't been keeping track of time, so I'm not sure how many minutes I have left, but I'll move pretty quickly through these because I think I'm probably getting close. So there are 5 main criteria in the program. The first is removing invasive weeds. The second is planting native plants. The third is reducing or eliminating use of pesticides. The fourth is wildlife stewardship, and the fifth is stormwater management. And these are the 3 different certification levels: silver, gold, and platinum. People here are probably familiar with invasive weeds and the problem with them. They have a huge economical impact on both farms and park spaces. Cities spend a lot of money trying to eliminate weeds. Cities and conservation districts do. And so this is a really great way to utilize volunteers, basically people who live in people who live in homes and can care for the land that they have control over. That's a really huge benefit to cities and conservation districts who are trying to eliminate some of these really aggressive weeds. So for each certification level, there are certain weeds that have to be removed, and we kind of created that list working with the local soil water conservation districts who kind of guided us on which ones they thought were the most important. In terms of native plants, everybody has a different idea of what they want to do with their yard. And so we have the 3 different options of silver, gold, platinum, and each of those levels require a certain amount of what I call naturescaping. So if you want to get silver certification, we would require that 5% of your yard be naturescaped, which is a pretty small amount. That's like an entry level certification. And then some people stay there because they have maybe a small playground for their kids, they have a dog run area, they have a garden, and that's good for them. Some people want to take it further. They'll plant 15% natives and reach gold certification. Some people are really into this. They see the birds coming in, they feel really good about what they're doing, and they bump up to platinum, which is 50% native plants. For stormwater, we have basically a menu of items, and people can pick 1 of these to reach silver certification, 2 to reach gold certification, or 3 to reach platinum. Some examples of stormwater are leaving leaves, which absorb a lot of stormwater, which make a huge difference for birds. A lot of them pick through the leaves trying to find little bugs to eat. Other things are planting rain gardens or planting large canopy trees. Some of these are more appropriate to Oregon City than others. Like in talking to city staff, I realized like, oh, maybe disconnecting downspouts isn't a good thing to do here because I think there's not like very good water retention in the soil. But these are kind of the options that we have. And then the same for wildlife, it's a menu of options and you can pick 1, 2, or 3 depending on which certification level you are going for. For pesticides reduction, we work closely with Metro. They have a program called growsmartgrowsafe.org, or they have a website, growsmartgrowsafe.org. I highly recommend this if you're ever interested in finding out, like if you have some kind of topical chemical that you apply to roses or something like that, you can look that up on here and find out how toxic it is to fish or to pets or to kids or people. And it has lots of great information about neonicotinoids and other chemicals. It also has a lot of information on things that you can do, like natural ways to address those same problems so that you don't have to use pesticides or other things. And so there are certain criteria to reach the different certification levels that incrementally you're cutting down on the number of pesticides that you're using. One of the things we always like to mention is that we like to think of ourselves as kind of growing the green economy in the area. We have a list of landscape professionals who come and get trained by us every year, and in return we put them on a list of landscapers that we recommend. So we have about, I think we have 22 people on the list, or 22 companies on the list this year, and last year with program participants, they had about $70,000 worth of projects. So that's a pretty significant boost to the income or to the economy of the region. So we think that's a really positive thing. It's also great because then our program participants know who they can hire if they need help with their yards, because some people have a lot of energy and can do that, and others need a little more assistance. And then to run through our accomplishments, we have over 4,200 properties enrolled in the program. That totals about 1,000 acres. About half of those are certified. The other half are working towards certification. And we have about 7,800 volunteer hours that have been dedicated to backyard habitat. And so we have a lot of support in the area, which is really great. about 55,000. I think this is probably about half of the actual number, but in our database, we have the 55,000 trees and shrubs have been planted. So that's huge if you think about it. That's a lot of habitat that's being provided. This is a map of our program area. This is from, this is actually from April, right before we expanded into Milwaukee, West Linn, Oak Grove, and Jennings Lodge. And so here's the new expansion area, and this is probably 4 times as many triangles in here. So each of these triangles represents an enrolled property. And so you can see kind of the difference that it makes in our region for all of these people to be working on this in their yards. And what's next? Oregon City, Gladstone, Happy Valley, Damascus, Wilsonville, and Tualatin, Stafford area. And so here's a map of that and a map of the different folks who are already enrolled, and we're working towards serving them too. And so if you're into this, if you like the sound of this and you want to help promote this, we've got a few different things you can do. If you're interested in eventually getting a site assessment for your own yard, you can sign up on our wait list, and then we'll be in touch with you in April to schedule a site assessment. You can help promote our official expansion in the spring. I've got some flyers here. I realize I didn't bring enough. I didn't realize it was such a large group. But we got some flyers here. And you can also always direct anybody to our website. If you just do a Google search for Backyard Habitat Oregon, you'll get our website. And then, yeah, if you know any landscapers that you think might want to be on our list, we could use more landscapers from Clackamas County to add to our list. So if you have anybody in mind, feel free to send them our way, and they can come to our training next winter. And then we have lots of free information on our website. So even if you don't want to enroll in the program, you can look at our website, and we have lots of free information for everybody on there. So feel free to do that. And then here's a list of our partners that we work with in the area. They all support the program. Are there any questions that anybody has?
Over here, Susan. Yeah. So that you've got 1,000 acres involved right now. And is that like Multnomah County and bigger than that, or is that?
Yeah, probably with, that number's a little bit old. Probably that would be in Multnomah County, which would be Portland, Gresham, Fairview, and then it would include Clackamas County, which would be Lake Oswego, West Linn, Oak Grove, Jennings Lodge, and Milwaukee. And so probably with all of those, we're probably about 1,200 total acres now.
Wow.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Sure.
Do you make visits to neighborhoods and giving presentations on how this is going and how they can get involved?
We do. Right now, a lot of our time is going to just getting ready for our official launch on April 23rd. There's going to be a media push for that. But once we get past that point, we have a very active summer outreach calendar, and we'll be hiring a new staff to work specifically in this new service area of Oregon City and the other cities I mentioned. So we will have capacity, and we would love to go to neighborhood associations and talk to them. It might take us a while to get to each neighborhood association because you've got a lot here. But yeah, certainly we would love to do that. Mm-hmm.
And would we go to the website to get on the list to get a speaker?
To get a speaker, you would actually, I would say email me. I'm kind of the one leading our Clackamas expansion, and I've got some business cards here that I'll leave with Christina.
And then I can also put her contact information on my liaison report.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so I'm the best contact for that, and I can help schedule that.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Yeah.
I know my brother worked for the National Audubon, and he helped start this
yeah.
program back east, and I think that's exciting. I'm going to tell him it's coming to Oregon City since this was his hometown. This is where his birding began. So
yeah,
that's
and
exciting.
That one's actually different than this one. That's national, or that's what's the name of the program?
Well, they do the backyard bird count, but they also started a backyard green and a greenscape, city greenscape.
Right, and so they have a backyard habitat program that's very different from ours. They I went through that one, and it's like when you sign up, there's a questionnaire that you fill out, and then you pay the fee, and they send you a packet of resources. But this is a very different one, and it's not managed by the same organization.
Interesting.
And this one is very like hands-on in terms of we go out and actually do a site assessment, and so we're there on the ground working with each program participant. And so it's
That's
cool
exciting.
that there are different ways to do it, because I think the Wildlife Federation does. I think they're great for like schools and other larger sites. One thing I didn't mention is that we only are able to assess sites that are under 1 acre. So that's something to keep in mind. I'm not sure how many large acres there are here, but that was agreed on at the very beginning, because the soil water conservation districts have so many resources to support those larger lands. And so we really come in and are able to do more with the smaller sites.
Great. Any other questions? Okay,
All right.
thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Okay, next up, we have Laura Turway doing some Land Use 101.
Yes.
I'll pass that. Thank you.
Commissioner Shaw's favorite presentation of the year.
Everybody's favorite, right?
Right.
Thanks for having me, Laura Torway, Community Development Director for the city. So I support both the planning and the building departments. And tonight I'm here to talk to you about planning. I'm going to go through the presentation. I know I have 15 minutes. If you have questions, stop me. I'm going to try and breeze through it. So if we want to deep dive on anything, let me know. Or Christina and I are always around to answer any questions that you have. Excuse me. All right, so let's dive in. We're starting off with everyone's favorite topic, which is the municipal code. So the Oregon City Municipal Code, as far as development goes, it sets minimum standards for development, whether it's what you can do at your home and what that looks like, or for commercial and residential uses. The big key takeaway here is it sets minimum design standards. It doesn't set optimum design standards. It doesn't say we want every building to look like this. It says this is the minimum setback you have to meet. This is the maximum height, and that's it. So it is not ideal, it is the minimum. So who creates this code? Everyone. Who can propose changes to the code? Anyone. You'll see it coming out of staff, but certainly any member of the public is welcome to propose code changes, and we certainly have had people through the years do that, not that many. The code changes happen through a very public process. I think it's kind of funny, this picture has no people in the room because we didn't have a picture of people in the room, but really it happens in a very public process. It involves certainly the CIC, it involves Planning Commission, so staff ends up making recommendations to the Planning Commission. Planning Commission we have public hearings on. Planning Commission is a group of 7 volunteers, and then ultimately the City Commission is the one who adopts code amendments. But everyone is always welcome to participate in all these code amendments. Generally, you'll see us send out these little postcards to let every property owner in the urban growth boundary know when we do code amendments, for the most part. So how do we know what standards we want for our city? One thing that we look at is our comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan is the basic guidelines for the city, and it tells us how we ought to grow. It addresses our statewide planning goals directly, and our Oregon City Municipal Code always has to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. Our last comprehensive plan was done in 2004, and so we're looking at maybe next budget cycle, making that a priority if we can find the funding for it. Comprehensive plan also looks at zoning in a way. So it's remember our basic guidelines for the city. So for example, for residential, it will say this is a lower density area, over here is a higher density area, and within each of those density categories, you'll see sub-zoning designations. That's why sometimes you'll see just a zone change on an application, and others you'll see a zone change plus an amendment to the comprehensive plan, amendment to the comprehensive plan, bigger deal. So those are our list of comp plan designations on the screen. So back to the zoning code. So we know this is our minimum design standards or requirements for development in the city. Some example code criteria for commercial, for example, will be building height, how many windows, what's the minimum number of windows you must have on a building, how much parking spaces must you have, what's the minimum for parking, what's the maximum for parking, how must a building look, the modulation of the building, is a big flat wall okay, no, do you need it to come in and out a little bit, building orientation, setback. There's certainly a lot of protections and environmental concerns. We do have a few environmental overlay districts for floodplain geologic hazards, which is slope and landslide, as well as our natural resource overlay district. And then we also have our historic districts as well.
Might kind of look like a courthouse or something there. Laura.
Carnegie.
Looks strangely like the library.
It does, yes. So when we go through this, you'll see that when they design buildings, the first thing that every good applicant does is take a look at our code and see what our design standards are before they do anything moving forward. And when we look at plans and we do development review, all we're doing is looking at our code and doing an analysis of how each of these design standards are or are not met. On the screen, you'll see an example finding. I know that everybody has read staff reports because they're really great. I'm starting to think of planners as authors because staff reports are in excess of 100 pages frequently. And so what it is what is the code standard, and then how does this application meet the code standard? It's very question and answer. Do a really good job explaining it, have all the plans next, in the application file so you can prove that you are meeting the code criteria. Ultimately, it's on the applicant to demonstrate compliance with all the code criteria. If there's one code criteria that's not met, it's denied. It has to meet all of them. We can place conditions on requirements. So, for example, if they have a building material that's not allowed, then we would say get rid of the building material that's not allowed as a condition of approval. But when we're looking for public comment during development review, the one thing we would encourage the public to do is look at the criteria, which is the most important part, which is why when we amend our code, it's really important that the public is present when we set up the criteria, because there's no criteria that says, does your neighborhood association support you? Do half your neighbors like it? That doesn't exist. Is the building meet our height standard, yes or no? So when we have reviews, there's 4 types of review, and it's gonna get a little jargony here, but so we have type 1, 2, 3, and 4, and they are distinguished by what our review process is. Type 1, think of as easy. Type 4, think of as hard and more process-wise. The difference between those is how much discretion there is in those approval criteria. So everything always goes back to the code. So when we look at the code and it identifies approval criteria, when we get to things like zone changes, the approval criteria is more bigger picture policy related. When we do a home addition, it's do you meet setbacks, height, lot coverage? Yes, no. So for type 1, digging in, some of the examples would be a home addition, a deck or a shed or something like that. Things, again, we're looking at are very numerical or non-discretionary. Are they building in their easements? Do they meet their minimum setbacks? You could get 5 people do the same review or 100 people do the same review and get the same answer. It's non-discretionary. And because of that, the review time is really quick. 10 minutes to a week. 10 minutes might be like a little aspirational, but over the counter to a week. And once you get through our application requirements, which are kind of sizable, they're really pretty quick. The next one is a type 2. And so the big types of type 2 would be a land division or a commercial development. And I think the important thing with type 2 is it doesn't matter if it is a 300 square foot addition or if it is a brand new apartment complex or shopping center. The process is the same. And the process is the same because the level of discretion is the same. And so these are minimal discretion, so slightly more than over the counter. some example, the criteria for land division, for example, would be lot size, lot width, lot depth, which again, you can measure quite easily, but then it gets into traffic impacts and to stormwater. And we know we have standards for stormwater and we have standards for traffic impacts, so there is minimal discretion there. This review process takes a little bit longer. Actually, the same timeline applies to 2, 3, and 4 generally, and that's that you start out with a pre-application conference, which is an initial research meeting. So you tell us what you want to do and give us your plans, and we'll research that, and we send it to, 40 to 60 different people. I'm not sure what the count is right now. We'll send it to, fire and engineering and you name it, and tribes. And we take all that input and then we put it together. Sometimes when you do development, we have code here and then we have code here, and they all kind of have to work together to get approval. So that's a one-stop shop for the applicant to take a look at it. They'll also understand what's expected of them from the city, so like street improvements, things like that. Then after that pre-application conference, so the pre-application conference, by the way, is closed to the public. The applicant's paying us to research their proposal. Everything they submit, though, is public record, just like everything that we do for the most part. But the meeting itself is closed. They submit an application. After that, they'll submit an application and we'll do what's called a completeness review, which is just a fancy way of looking at a checklist to make sure they turned in everything they need to turn in. And that's really important because we want to make sure that when we do public notifications and we start processing these applications, that everybody's on the same level playing field and that the public gets to see everything in the application. We get to see everything in the application. It can be really difficult when things come dribbling in. After it's deemed complete, then we'll do a notification. For the type 2 notification, we put notices on our website. We put the whole application on our website. I'll show you that in a minute. We mail notices to properties within 300 feet. Our state law is 100 feet. We also send email notices to you guys, so you're welcome for that. And we will write a staff report with those findings that you saw and issue a decision. Anyone who participated in that has standing to appeal that decision to the City Commission. So there is no public hearing. It's just all on paper. Here's an example of the notice. Again, a little bit more detail about the notification. Things to look for when you get a notice that looks like this. One is the website, which shows where you can go online to find all the information. And 2 is the comment deadline. So there is a start date for a comment period and there is an end date for a comment period. You want to make sure that you get your comment in during the comment period. It's all very important. If you get any of these, though, give us a call. We love to get calls about notices and tell you all about what we're working on. We love public participation input. I think it's a lot of reason why we get into planning in the first place. So don't be afraid to call us.
On the type 2 is neighborhood notification, is a notice, try this again. On type 2s, is there a requirement for a neighborhood meeting?
So in our code, we do have a requirement for neighborhood meeting. It's not for type 2s. It lists out specifically the application types that the neighborhood requirements are for. So it's for more than type 2s, but it lists specific for land division, site plan design review, and it lists by application type what requires.
So would this one that you're using as an example be the one that would have?
So like 95% of them. We realize legislatives aren't required to go to neighborhood association, but most things are. Okay. And they're required to go to neighborhood association to start that information in the dialogue. They're not, we want to put the public on notice that things are coming so they can participate once they see it. So hopefully this isn't the first time you've seen it when you get our notice. And you can work with the developer or not when they do their presentation, but ultimately what we're looking at is starting to create that, the talking and to start it to understand what's going on so you can participate fully. On the public notification front, we have a really great website at www.orcity.org. It's a map, and so you can go on the map and you can filter by application type. You can look for public works projects, you can look for land use, and you can sort by year, and it will show you a little map of the projects, and you just click on the project, and then up will come all the application materials. The other thing, sorry, going back to the notices that's important, is this thing right here, which is the criteria, because again, we base all our decisions on criteria. All right, so type 3. So type 1, over the counter, type 2, on paper, type 3 means that there's a hearing, and it's with the Planning Commission. Some examples of type 3 applications would be like conditional uses. Conditional uses are things that, for example, for residential zones, it's not untypical to it's typical to sometimes see a school or a church or a nursing home in a residential zone, but knowing that they have different impacts than a bunch of houses next door, that's where the conditional use process comes in. So we take a look at those neighborhood impacts a little bit differently. So maybe lighting should be different or landscaping should be different to act as a buffer. So it's a little bit more discretion. Some of those standards are a little bit bigger in nature. Here's some examples of them, talking about the suitability given the topography, shape, location, things like that. Pretty discretionary. And because of that, we as staff make a recommendation. It goes to our Planning Commission. Again, the group of 7 volunteers who ultimately make a decision. You'll see that it talks about our comprehensive plan and implementing the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan. Here's our process for that. Same thing, pre-application conference, completeness review. I forgot to mention before, when you submit your application for most things, the city has 120 days to process that application, and that includes a final city decision. So that means that in this case, 120 days sounds like a long time, but it means that we need to have as many we have to do our public notification, and there's time requirements for that. And then we have to have a planning commission hearing or as many planning commission hearings as it takes. And then we have to wait till we make a decision. Then after decisions are made, people have 2 weeks to appeal it. And then we have to have dealt with the appeal at the city commission. So you can see how 120 days gets really, really tight. And I think the hard part for us as a city is that we don't control development, right? We process applications. We don't really do applications very much. So we could be very, very busy, which we have been. So here is the screenshot of our land use applications for a type 3. It's different here because it'll tell you the date of the Planning Commission hearing. Excuse me. We also post these in the paper, and then we send out more emails when we transmit the Planning Commission agendas as well. But we do all the things that we do normally, which is, signs on the property, mailed notices, and on the project website. So type 4 is the most discretionary one. In this case, we're using an example of a zone change. It's a big deal, and the criteria are very discretionary. And so here's some example. One is compliance with the comprehensive plan. We know that has a ton of goals and policies to go by. And those are all very big picture. And then other things talk about, is it consistent with the capacity and function? So can it be served by utilities and things like that in the next zoning designation? All very discretionary, which is why it doesn't stop at Planning Commission. It can go to City Commission. So it goes staff recommendation to Planning Commission. Planning Commission can deny, or Planning Commission to recommend approval to the City Commission, who again is the ultimate decider in that case. Here's a flow chart of that. You can see, again, now having to go through 2 commissions and as many meetings as it takes with those 2 commissions. Knowing that the City Commission ultimately takes 2 readings of an ordinance to get adopted, that is very tight. And those are state timelines, so a lot of cities have them too. Another screenshot of our public notification and our project's webpage. Call us. Again, I had mentioned it before. I'm mentioning it again because we really want to chat about our projects and let people know how to participate. It's frustrating for I can imagine it's frustrating for the public to not understand how to participate, and it's frustrating for us too because we want you to understand. And we want you, when you come to a public hearing, understand what this process looks like and know that you get 3 minutes before you're here and think that you get 30. Any questions?
Did you breathe?
Barely. Well, I wanted to stick to 15 minutes. Also, I have our stats for 2017, and they're very interesting. I hope you had a chance to look at them. The elevator speech for these is that we're very busy. So this is for community development, which is planning and building. You'll notice in the building side of things, the valuation, so the number of building permits is about the same as last year, but the valuation almost doubled. So that means that we saw a lot of larger, complicated building projects come in, and the same with planning. So it'll go planning, engineering, building. So we are seeing very complicated projects. We're seeing a lot of appeals and things like that too, but just the nature of all these projects are very complex and big scale. We haven't seen this many multifamily or new buildings in years, if at all, in the last 15 years. I've been here 17 for you.
It's probably of 607.
Yeah.
Any questions for Laura? And all this as they prepare to move in April.
And we're moving on April 17th to 20th.
Linda?
So you get approval. And
Yay.
do you get a stamp, or what do you do? And after it's approved, are you done? Or how is it done? Okay, gone through the process, and we have little stamps as it's approved. Then what? Are you just...
I love that question because we often just stop at the end of planning, but it takes so many other departments. After planning approval, which is this regulated timeline, people have to go into engineering review. And so that means oftentimes you'll have to do street improvements when you have a project, and you'll have to get all your plans together. And there's normally a series of reviews to get your plans just perfect before you start building. And then you will go build your street improvements, and the city has inspectors and things like that through that process. And then when you're done with the street improvements, only then can we allow a subdivision to plat or your commercial building to start building. So public infrastructure first, then you can start to build your project. The whole process in general takes a long time. I've seen it take years and years and years. But if you're quick, a year is about quick, but it depends.
So, but my question was, after you get it stamped, we say, okay, we're done. This is, you can go ahead. There's no street improvements. This is your little backyard project. We've got it done. Are you done? I mean, do you...
Then you would submit for building, you would submit for engineering. If there are no street improvements, then you submit for building department. If you're just doing a home remodel project, building's really quick. Most things they can do over the counter. If not, they'll take a couple days. It depends. If you're doing things that would cover more land, then it would normally we'd want to check it with Development Services Department to make sure that you're not in an easement or something like that. So that would take about a week. So you're not done until you're done with planning, building, and engineering, so all three departments. But then when you're done, you do get something that says, yay, you're done. And then you can start building. And then when you start building, there is these series of inspections that you'll have to call in for each type of development. So like for a house, you could think of footings and framings and stuff like that. And so we'll check in incrementally as development occurs to make sure that it is safe for the public, which is our ultimate goal. And then at the end, like if you're building a new house, we'll circle back to some of those planning criteria and final everything out at the end. So at the end, then you do get issuance of a certificate of occupancy. You do get like a certificate that says you're done.
And then that's it?
Then you move in.
You move in?
Enjoy.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're never done.
Then you start your next project.
Mike, did you have a question?
Yeah, so on the public meeting part, when a public meeting is required, we've got a situation now where we have some neighborhood associations that maybe are not active. We have some that are maybe meeting with other neighborhood associations. We have some that maybe don't have anybody ever show up for the meeting. How is it, what is the developers or the applicants' requirement to notify and hold a public meeting when the neighborhood association, which is supposed to be the first line of information on that, is not functioning the way it should be?
It depends on the specifics. So if it doesn't exist, then they will meet with the CIC. And we saw that happen 2 years ago.
We need to see it now if anything comes up in Westling Farms because they're inactive. While they're invited to the South End group, they are inactive. So anything that would come into Westling Farm, Hazel Grove needs to come to the CIC. So we currently have that specific one inactive.
Yeah, so I can't remember. Okay. And then the other thing is if you just get a low turnout, the requirement is just that you hold a neighborhood association meeting. And actually the requirement's a little different than that. It is, you always give notice to the CIC chair for the neighborhood association meetings, and then you give your notice to the neighborhood association you want to meet in. If the neighborhood association doesn't exist, then you do that. If they don't want to meet for some reason or they can't meet within your time frame, then you hold your own meeting. And there's requirements for how you hold your own meeting. So I'd use your 300-foot mailing label notices and hold your own meeting within the Boundary Yard City facility. So it depends. I know it's a government-y answer, depends. But sometimes it comes to CIC, and sometimes you can always hold your own, you know?
If they hold their own, do they still need to notify the CIC?
I believe so.
I can, in my liaison report, I can get it written out for next month to really kind of lay out what's expected by our code for this.
And it's in OCMC 1750 if anyone wants to look it up. And the time requirements are for 30 days. So we know that neighborhood associations don't always meet in the time frame that development needs. So it's the 30 days is the window. And we're always here Monday through Friday from 8:30 to 3:30 at our current location until we move in April to the Mount Pleasant Annex. And Christina can answer all other questions and is a great resource for you guys too.
Okay. Can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but we're doing okay on time, it looks like. And I don't have an answer for this, but it's just an observation. You mentioned how many agencies look at an application before it ever gets to the Planning Commission, right? Fire departments looked at it, police departments looked at it, the school districts looked at it, and they've all signed off that, hey, this works.
They either just didn't sign off.
They may be silent, but they usually tell us when things don't work more.
Okay. I guess my point is, when you hear public comments, so often it's about there's no room in the school, or a fire truck can't turn around, or whatever, when in fact that's already been reviewed. And I guess I'm saying, wondering how we can educate people more that those things have already been looked at and handled by, or approved, whatever the right word is, by the proper agency. I don't know. That's just a comment. I know it's not an easy answer.
And I think
I don't have a fix.
For some of these like schools, there's multiple bites at the apple. If you're in, for example, the Park Place concept plan area, any concept plan area, when we do our comprehensive plan zoning and our map for how this area is going to be, the schools and all these agencies participate in that. And then we'll come back for annexation and they get notice for that. Then we come back for zoning. Sometimes they're together, notice for that. Development, again, notice for that. So we look and we look and we look again each time. But yes, it's true. We look at it often, and when we do, another thing is that when we do these long-term plans, we assume full build out of the city, right? And we assume full build out of the metro region when we say look at transportation. We assume that every nook and cranny is going to be redeveloped, and that's how we look at plans. I think.
In a way, I think you answered your own question by, there's a checklist that they have that when they send it to us, and it shows who they send it to. So we can educate that way, right?
The point I was trying to make is we know that.
Well, I'm saying you can use that to educate if somebody
But
asks
I
you.
don't think we've done a very good job of educating people that come to our neighborhood association, or more importantly, the people that don't come to our neighborhood association meeting.
Good idea. Good
That's
point.
how it works. And I don't have a fix for how you get
No,
people
but keep that written down in our goals of getting the word out.
Yeah, okay.
Great.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. 2, 3, 3. Okay, next item is public comments. At this time, if anybody in the audience has a comment, they can fill out a card and come up and make a comment. We did have, an email was passed out. Someone sent in an email and asked for their email to be included as in agenda item 3, public comments. So we don't need to address that right now, but it's there. You have that, and it's in the record. Okay, staff liaison questions answered from the previous meeting. Was there anything that you needed to say about that? Or I think when I looked through it,
Well, I know
everything
there was a request for Kristen Brown to come, and I got her for the May meeting. She's our new communications coordinator. Let's see, that was the big one I wanted to say that, and she's finally at a point where I'm gonna be able to meet with her, so I think we're gonna have a much better understanding of our work plan to help increase the citizens' ability to get access to notifications to newsletters, notifications to planning commission agendas, all that. And I think she's going to help us kind of with our public outreach campaign of really user-friendly flyers for that. So I'm hoping that'll come out. And definitely when you meet with her in May, if there's things that you think we as a city are not doing well in communicating, tell her, because that put that bug in her ear. Like, these are the things that we need to, as a city, do better with in communication.
That'd be a good reminder when that comes up.
Yeah. People had some question about the alternative mobility targets regarding the right turn lane, so I put that information in. And just want to let you know, we are transitioning for minutes. The contract's just starting. So unfortunately, there'll probably be some spring meeting where we have 5 or 6 meeting minutes. But once we have that done, we'll be back to the monthly minutes. And there'll be more action minutes on this end.
Okay. So we'll probably put that just in a consent agenda all in one.
Yeah, but yeah, it'll just be that. But just know that we're going to get through this chunk and then we'll go back to normal once we get the new transcription contract finalized.
Okay. For general business, on the back, we came up with 6 goals for our, before I do this, we want to welcome John Eason. All right, he is another one of the Berkeley Hills new members that are here tonight. Welcome aboard. So our 2017 and to 19 goals and work plan that we developed, well, some of us developed, some of your predecessors developed. There were 6 goals that we chose that we wanted to work on this year, work on for the next 2 years. And we would like to pick out a couple of them that we would really like to work on this year. And one of them that I'm hoping you agree, because this has come up at every meeting, that we want to work on is goal number 4, and that's reviewing the grievance process and talking about possible code and submission requirement reviews or changes or amendments. So that's one of the ones that we've talked about. And I think goal 4, 5, and 6, we kind of created. The goals 1, 2, and 3 were kind of carried forward because we knew we always had room for improvement and could work on. So I'm looking for your thoughts right now on kind of prioritizing a couple of these so that we know what direction we want to take for the rest of the year. So 4 was grievances, 5 was better understanding our roles as CIC members, and when receiving city information, kind of like what Mike was saying, if we get information, how are we passing it on? And goal 6 was looking at our code and being inconsistent with election processes with the other boards and commissions. We have a unique situation where we're named to the committee in January for 2 years. And then in our code, we say in January, we will nominate officers. Well, that's oftentimes the first meeting someone's ever been to. And so they might not have any clue if they want to run for office or anything. So that's something that we had thought we might need to look at. So what are your thoughts for this year?
Well, personally, I like number 5, just because I'm still not quite sure what I'm doing here. I'm listening to everybody and trying to learn, but I mean, I don't exactly, give a vote now and then, but it'd be nice to know for sure what my responsibilities and rights and stuff are, I guess.
Agreed.
I could add to that. I concur. I've been a part of this for a few years, and I'm still kind of wondering about some of the structures, the expectations of the neighborhoods, and how they apply, and how they sort of integrate with the city and the dispatch of the communication. And I think to add to that, whether that would be, I don't know which one that would be following in, but I think just a general knowledge of like exactly what it is that we do or can do and how that information is disseminated within the neighborhoods. And I know even in my own neighborhood, Kenema, oftentimes we're not really sure, exactly. We give a report from the CIC and we're dispatching information that's been given to us. And sometimes there's a stopgap or a misstep, and we're not all informed on where we're going. The information like today for a presentation, that's kind of an interesting concept, an interesting idea. And I think oftentimes we miss the beat in getting more information out. Now, whether we need, and I'm so happy about, is it May that we have the community?
Yeah.
Christine. Well, that will be good because I think we need more of that contact. We need more of the way in which we could bring more information out to the various neighborhoods.
Okay, so definitely,
I don't know which goal
Number
that falls
5.
under. 5.
well, yeah.
I guess adding to that would be like, do we do that in session when we meet here? Or do we do that in ad hoc groups with 2 or 3 volunteers and coming up with some kind of consensus and then sharing it with the rest of us? I mean, is there a better way to perform our task if we have more hands in the pot as opposed to just sort of, reading the flyer? I don't know. It just seems...
I agree with your statement there that we're all kind of new at it, and we get our vision and we take it away from here, and it grows or it fades. By the time the next month comes around, we say, oh, we got other hot topics, and you kind of let this one drift away. So how, setting up a committee or a off-site from this meeting, a group, as an example, we talked a little bit last month about low attendance and at neighborhood association meetings, and I can't say that every neighborhood raised their hand and said, yeah, we're dealing with that problem, but do we get a group together of 3 or 4 neighborhood associations that fit that mold of low attendance, and they go off and do some brainstorming and study to see if the 4 neighborhoods or 5 or whatever the number is can agree on things to try and improve it.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be goal 3, where helping, and exactly what you're saying.
So it's kind of misery loves company at times when we haven't been successful or we're not, or new people need to come together. I think that would be a way to accomplish that, is to set it up, and whether we just go get together and drink more coffee and go home afterwards, or I think some things will stick after we get a little more communications going on.
Okay.
If I can just one for number 5, even just at a base level, if we had somebody that knew what this is all about, makes just one little printout that says, okay, CIC, and the code is responsible for this and this and this. no, neighborhood and code is responsible for this and this and this. Give us a place to start, to say, okay, you come to these meetings for the purpose of, as you come to the meetings, your responsibilities are, stuff like that. And I think, William had mentioned it a meeting or two ago, at one point, there was a little booklet or something that somebody knew about. Some base level, an organizational chart or something, I don't know. I don't know, that somebody new can look at it and go, okay, I can read this, and next month I'll know at least a little bit about what's going on.
Great idea.
So,
Great idea.
So I think I'm hearing a consensus that number 5 is number 1.
Yeah, number 5 is your top priority, because.
Do you want to do that before we do grievances?
Here, so.
Yeah, I agree.
well, I think that's something, personally, that would be pretty quick. If somebody that knew it could do something real quick on it, and just at the next meeting, hand it out or something. I don't think it would take tons of discussion or anything like that.
It may be more beneficial to more people to understand this communication, what we're doing. I understand we get grievances from time to time, but is that the real reason we're here? Or are we trying to get up and get functioning at a higher level across all neighborhoods? So with that, yeah, it might be 5 beats out 4. 4 is your grievance. Not saying that it goes off the table.
No, right.
No. Amy?
Was it
Just seconds.
2 years ago, 3 years ago that we did the study? That we met for about 6 months to put together the communication planning on how to get neighborhood associations up, functioning, working, involved, get the people to understand how the neighborhood works. And don't we still have that document?
The public involvement plan?
Yeah. And isn't that what Vern was just
But
mentioning?
Bringing it back to life.
Bringing it back and maybe reviewing it. It seems like 4 and 6 are kind of related in that they deal with bylaws and code. And I was involved with putting together the code, the bylaws for the original CIC, which was a council. And now we've changed to a committee. So are those bylaws totally superseded?
There are no bylaws.
And we have to use the city code to, okay.
Karen?
And that was where my comment was going. Now that we've had a couple years to work under the code that was somewhat hastily put together, I think we're seeing there's places that we could have done better, things that need to be revised. I would say just form a subcommittee to review code, including grievances and elections. But I wouldn't drop it too low on the list. I think it is something we do need to get addressed. That could be subcommittee work and just one presentation to the full committee.
Thoughts on that?
I like that idea.
Okay.
So who specifically though, each one of these, items 4 and 6,
Can you make sure your microphone's on so we can hear you?
picking it up now,
I hope so. Is the light on?
see a light?
Oh, I don't know how that one works.
It doesn't look like it.
Oh,
that's a
this
manual
not on
one.
top.
Okay.
Okay. So that's John Easton speaking. I mean, looks like 4 and 6 need to have some people that are nuts and bolts folks that know about what's in the city codes, and just to go through that and make a recommendation on what those would be. And I guess, who is that person? Because right now I haven't heard the name. How do we find that?
Well, let's see. Karen knows, and I know, and
Steve knows.
Steve knows, and Mike to some extent knows, and
No.
Dennis doesn't.
Dennis is denying it. They should.
Total denial, total denial.
Okay, so as far as, do we want to, tonight, form an ad hoc group for that, or do we want to do that next month? What are you? I mean, should we just get started now?
I think I'd put it in the, on next month's agenda so that if people are interested, and just say, if you can't attend and you're interested, let Amy know.
Okay.
Because I think we've got a few neighborhoods not represented at the moment, and some people that might have skills.
Okay.
Amy, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So with the grievance piece of it, the ad hoc committee and staff I can support, but what I don't know with grievance is kind of what are people's thoughts?
We're gonna get there, we're not there.
No, but with the piece of having a subcommittee, I'm worried that we don't have a chance as a CIC to kind of chew through the kind of concerns or goals or aspirations for the grievance, rather than taking it into the subcommittee.
I'm not seeing why.
Okay.
It's just review of code and recommendations. I'm not sure why any of it needs to be chewed completely over, but it would be presented to the full committee for approval. So, because both of those are just, I mean, they're part of the code, and it's a chance to look at the full code to make sure it's working for us.
And I have some information I'm going to share when we get to the grievance portion tonight. So that might help answer some of the questions and stimulate some more thoughts. And so I think that's a good idea if we put on the agenda for next month to create the committee. And then at that point in time, if there's feedback and direction, that we'll have more information too. And we can decide if, the committee can meet, have some ideas, and bring it back and say, hey, we need to have a work session. And, it could be.
The second thing I wanted to comment was that if during this time a group is working on code changes, if there is an ability to kind of put a stay on new grievances while this is happening, and that's something for the group to think about next month when you kind of create this committee.
So it sounds like we know what we're going to do with 4 and 6. We're going to kind of roll them together, and next month we're going to pick volunteers / appoint a subcommittee.
Right.
Okay. And then did we decide that then goal 5 is number 1? Because I agree with what John said. Those two are kind of nuts and bolts. Review it, done. These other ones are more ongoing, but my suggestion would be that 5 is actually number 1.
Mm-hmm. Because then that will lead to number 3. Once we all understand what our role is, then we can help each other and talk about the public involvement plan, inactive, and for number 3, that was the other concern.
No, so
it's kind of, I'm hearing the 4, 6, so 5 is 1, 4, 6 is 2, and 3 is 3. Is that kind of, and 2 and 3 will kind of be happening.
They kind of go all together.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense.
Okay. Does that not make sense?
I think it actually
It is, yeah.
Okay. Good. Okay.
Now we're down to 3 goals. Okay.
Now we're down to the next
What did you go together?
And it's nice having time to just think of it.
grievances.
I have a 4.
So for what we're gonna do, we have 3.
Yeah, I just have a 4 slide just to give everyone
Okay.
All right, so grievance process. So it's the task of a grievance committee to study grievances of those considered themselves adversely affected by the CIC. We have 3 grievances, 2 that were submitted by Mark Matheson. And last month, he recommended that the city not process the grievance while he was actively involved in a lawsuit with the city. The second set is by Miranda Sierra, and she, in her grievance submittal, requested that all CIC members that were appointed by the mayor, which is everybody, be recused. So there's really kind of two options the CIC can make tonight. One is to put a request on hold, and because we don't have a rejection option in our code, so I'm a little worried about rejection, but can permanently table until you hear from the Sierra that she no longer wishes to recuse the members. Or two, that the CIC is not obligated to recuse anybody based on a recommendation by somebody submitting, and they could move forward with the grievance as noted. So those are really two options that can be done for Ms. Sierra's grievance tonight. The CIC can send letters out without creating a grievance committee for both of them, or all these letters, the normal letters that are done can be, with that direction, can be sent by the grievance committee. The difference is if the CIC sends them out, and at some point either of them come back and say, I wish to process this now, we haven't set up a grievance committee, so we then would have to set up a grievance at that time. If the grievance committee is created tonight, then they could, in a sense, meet once we've heard. So both our options are fine. One could go through, both could go through, neither of them could go through. But those are really the options by the CIC tonight for these submitted grievances. And real quickly, the process, once they are submitted and move forward, is the grievance is forwarded to the CIC, and the CIC forms a grievance committee at random, so someone will choose these names from our box of the CIC members. The first thing we do is recommend mediation, so the letter that's sent out by the grievance committee says, we recommend mediation. If they come back afterwards, then grievance committee meetings are held. Thank you. The grievance committee holds the meetings and adopts a written recommendation and finding, and then presents that to the citizen involvement committee, who hears the report back from the grievance committee and then adopts or amends the written findings for a non-binding recommendation back. So that is the grievance, truncated part of the grievance process today. So what you have tonight is you have three grievances submitted, but kind of odd pieces of why they may have trouble moving forward. So I can go back to that in the sense of what the CIC wants to do tonight. And once again, you could create the grievance committee and send out letters that basically say we're going to put these on hold until we hear from you, or send letters from the CIC and say we're going to do nothing until we hear from you, or three, continue processing the applications or the submittals through the grievance committee process.
My recommendation, and we'll still continue, would be to form a grievance committee for the first and the third, and have the CIC send the letter for the second saying we will wait to form a grievance committee until we hear. That would be Roy?
Can I just ask for clarification on the, my understanding was that Mr. Matheson's letter or suggestion to not go ahead applied to both grievances?
I think it is both, sorry. I think that bullet mark was for both.
Okay, so both of the
yeah.
So then, so then I would recommend we send a letter saying we will not process one and the first two until we hear from you, and then, but go ahead with the third. That would be my suggestion, right?
If I recall correctly, at the last meeting, I think it was Mike, asked if somebody was going to talk to the lawyer about doing the grievance when there was a lawsuit place.
And that's what the recommendation is. This what we've said is that we recommend that we don't process the grievance, whether we do that from the CIC saying not, or the
there wasn't an official term. I mean, the CIC can choose. I mean, Mr. Matheson has given that recommendation. This is a non-binding grievance process, so the CIC can choose what they want to do.
Yeah, the lawyer said basically you guys just need to decide and do something.
So, okay, so someone did talk to the lawyer.
There has been some legal counsel going on here, or a minor amount of it anyway.
Not specific to the cases necessarily, more involved in just the general grievance process.
Yeah, I mean, the grievance process is a non-binding process where the CIC can provide recommendations. So it's not our job as city staff to determine next steps for you on this.
Mike?
Go ahead. Go with Linda first.
Linda?
I'm holding my...
Chew your tongue.
My thought is, since she doesn't want anyone who's on the CIC has been appointed by the mayor to serve as the committee, that we can't do anything. I think we need to wait until, or send her a letter asking her to remove that before we do. That's my thought.
Ready?
As vice chair, am I able to make a motion?
Yes.
Okay. I move
I'm
that.
asking Karen to make sure.
What?
She's our catch. Mike, make a motion as a vice chair. Okay.
Jerry, you're the only one who can.
I move that we put Mr. Matheson's we not form a grievance committee, and that we put Mr. Matheson's 2 grievances on hold until such time as his lawsuit with the city is resolved. And we put Ms. Sierra's grievance on hold until such time that she modifies or withdraws her request to recuse all the members.
I second
second.
that.
Discussion. Do we need to send notice to them of those, if that is the decision?
What I can do is I can modify the CIC grievance committee memos to be from the CIC, and Amy can sign that letter on behalf of the CIC.
So that would need to be part of the motion that,
Yeah, it would be repurposing the CIC grievance committee memos that are attached in your grievance packet tonight can just be repurposed to the effect that you see on the.
But they won't actually be from the grievance committee, they'll be from the CIC because we don't have a grievance
It'll be from
committee.
the CIC and signed by Amy on behalf of the CIC.
Okay.
do you amend your motion as such?
Yeah, yes. But Christina said it would be part of the motion.
Linda, do you second that change?
I do.
Okay. Any other discussion? All right. Then we will vote.
Okay, Berkeley Hills.
That's me.
Yeah.
Sorry. Say yes.
Hey. No, you get to say what you want to say, Janice.
Is this round table now?
No.
No.
Never mind. Yes.
This is voting yes or no to the motion that was on the floor. This is why we want to help ourselves train. Okay, continue.
Okay, Kenema,
Dennis?
Yes.
Caulfield,
Yes.
Gaffney Lane,
Yes.
Hillendale,
Yes.
McLaughlin's not here, Park Place,
Yes.
Rivercrest,
Abstain.
South End, not here, Tower Vista,
Yes.
and Two Rivers, not here. Okay, motion carries. So I will, maybe before the meeting ends,
Okay.
I will have, I'll go back and change the memo, and we can mail those out tomorrow.
Great. Okay, really quick. I just wanted to, one of the things that we met as an executive committee in advance of this meeting, kind of talking about how we're going to work and move forward. And one of the things that we talked about in the grievances was understanding a little bit of the history of the CIC and why they hear grievances. And so I just want to give a brief history that if this doesn't go back for the eternity of time. If William Gifford was here, he could probably give us even more. But this is a pretty good shot of things that have been happening since about 2012, I think, is when I got involved. And really before that, I don't think there was a whole lot of grievance that I came in right at about Park Place was having some grievances, and that was kind of the beginning of
That was the beginning of
Yeah.
the grievance process.
Okay, so I want you to think really just kind of keep in the back of your mind, what is the overall goal of the grievance process and what should be the CIC's role? That's kind of a thought. And then what's the benefit of processing this grievances through the CIC? How does it help us as the CIC meet our goals? When we had our bylaws, and we had an idea, and it was summed up. I saw a billboard as I was driving through Idaho yesterday that kind of summed up what I remember as part of the process of why we felt grievances were so important. And that was, the billboard I saw was education, not litigation. The feelings behind the grievances was we wanted people to have a place to come if the if the CIC, and this was exactly how we worded it, if there was a grievance concerning the activities, policies, or recommendations of the CIC. At the time, the CIC was hearing land use issues for what is now the Two Rivers. So anything downtown Oregon City, all up to the Oregon City Shopping Center. That's a big development area. And so the CIC was hearing land use applications for that. And most of the time when someone would come present, even like tonight, we would poll the members and say, are we in favor? Do we want to put out a support, or do we have a concern against this? And we sent a lot of letters in support of projects. So we would say, hey, the CIC is behind backyard habitat. We want to encourage members. Or we want to, we're behind this development, or we have some concerns about it. And so if those actions, if our recommendations, if someone felt grieved, they could file a grievance against the CIC. We also, at the time, had neighborhoods who were having troubles, and they didn't feel that they could figure out what to do. And so we had a grievance that we felt that this was important. The city commission said, we have no authority over neighborhood associations. And so there really wasn't a place for the neighborhoods to go to feel like they could get help at the time. And so we said, hey, we'll take that on. And again, the thought was education. And so one of the first steps that we recommended when, in our bylaws, when a neighborhood came, first we said, we recommend you go to mediation and try to get this worked out. If that didn't work, then the next step when we formed the grievance committee was that we helped them look at their bylaws and see if there was a way to work it out that they already had in their bylaws that they hadn't thought of before. And so it was, again, an education piece. And if that didn't work, that's why we had the grievance committee, and they met, they listened to both sides. Again, it's non-binding, but sometimes just in the process of listening to both sides that you're able to come up with a resolution. Maybe not everybody's happy, but you can at least understand where each side is coming from and just kind of calm everything down. That was kind of our thought process. And so it went from, we used to have a 5-member, we would just say, who wants to be on the grievance committee? And we had to pick 5 people. But no one wanted to raise their hand. And that's why we went to the draw out of a hat or out of a box, so that it was completely random. And that way everybody kind of had a chance. So that was kind of the thought behind the grievances. As we transitioned from 2013 bylaws, at that point we said, well, if it's against the CIC, we'll take 3 members from that 5-member committee. And the grievant got to choose, and the grievant, whoever was the person that was filed the grievance got to choose. The committee chose one, and then I think the CIC, so like tonight's if it was against Karen. So if the one that came in got to choose, Karen would get to choose, and then the committee got to choose the 3rd. And those 3 people met, studied the process, worked with the people, if it was a CIC grievance. As we went to code, it was kind of slimmed down, and somewhere in the mix of this, we've kind of gotten it tied into planning commission grievances, city commission, and so it's kind of taken on this life of its own. And it's gone quite far from the original intent. And so the questions, again, that I asked, why do you think we need what's the goal of having a grievance process? What's our role as the CIC? And how, or should we even have grievances? So that's something to think about. We wanted to talk about, and if you have any thoughts about that, you can share them here, or you can just email me, and we can put those to the committee, or when we meet, or whoever decides to meet next time. But it's some things to think about of what's our goal with the grievances.
Ask a question.
Yeah, please.
If I understood correctly, then originally the grievance committee was only for grievances against the CIC, but it's now expanded into other areas?
It started at the CIC and then neighborhoods were added. That was done under our bylaws. But it was very specific. It was, where's the wording? So for grievances against the CIC, it was for activities, policies, if you have a grievance concerning the activities, policies, or recommendations of the CIC. So it wasn't personal. And then the grievance committee shall serve as the body to which neighborhood association problems should be addressed. As a grievance committee relates to neighborhood associations, then the same timeline went forward. Any other questions? Comments? Okay. Now our favorite part, round table. Here we go. John, this is a time where we just go around and everybody can share what's going on in their neighborhood and make announcements or bring up questions or concerns that your neighborhood has.
You're gonna make him go first at his first meeting?
If you don't want to, we can move on.
No, that's fine.
Janice was excited. She has something she wants to bring up.
Actually, I think one of the things I'm most interested in is just how we pass out information to people about the developments that are coming on. Because I read comments that are on the next door, which is kind of interesting, but it is real clear a lot of people seem to be surprised by things that are coming up. And I'm personally very interested in exactly how things are going to be done. The little park they're putting in down there in Newell Creek, it's just off, have an entrance off Mahalla, how that's going to be administered and policed. So I think there's a lot that in your goals that you have here that would do a lot to help the citizens of the city.
All right, Janice?
All right, well, what's going on in our neighborhood is we're having, our park committee, is we're having our general meeting on Tuesday the 13th.
We have to make sure we're heard. That's why Renee's bringing out the microphones. Because if somebody's watching this, it's being recorded, and if you're watching it, it's hard to hear.
We're going to have Pete Walters from the Oregon City Planning Department update on what's going on in Oregon City and the Newell Creek Canyon. And we're also going to have the Oregon City Police give us an update of what's happening on the Roosevelt Street. And I was kind of wondering why the notices were sent out so early for our meeting.
So we're having a situation, Katie had asked for postcard information to be given to her 3 weeks in advance. And the goal with that was that the postcards would go out no sooner than 1 week before the meeting. And their postcards for their 13th meeting have already been received. And my meeting, 2 weeks ago? Okay, so you sent it well before the 3 week, yes. And so it immediately went to the printer and it got mailed out immediately. And
So normally the idea is that people get the postcard about a week before the meeting.
Right.
And this was too early, okay.
Yeah, and I sent my postcard to Katie 3 weeks before the meeting, thinking that they would come out a week before the meeting, and they came out 2 weeks before the meeting. So we need to firm up between Katie and Buell's, and then let us know exactly what we need to do to make sure that we're getting them.
Is 1 week enough? Just asking.
2 weeks.
It is, what?
Yep.
If you get it too far in advance, they forget.
Right. You only need 1 week notification.
Yeah,
Okay.
It's been at least that's what we've found.
Okay,
Time-wise.
just asking the question.
Okay, so we'll keep following, we'll find out what's going on there. Okay, Linda?
I'll let Dennis talk.
Karen?
Okay, our next meeting is a week from Thursday on Thursday, March 15th, and we have confirmed that Phil Lewis, Jim Band, and Mike Day will be there so that we can have a discussion over Upper Waterboard Park.
I will be there.
The overlook and various other issues. So we're looking forward to problem solving.
Great. Roy?
Hillendale, we have our steering committee meeting tomorrow night. Our next general meeting will be, we got here April 3rd at our normal place at Living Hope Church. We haven't got any details worked out yet. We'll firm that all up tomorrow night and then get that information over to Katie. Not too much going on in our area. We had one person interested in doing a land use presentation, but then they backed out. They just said they didn't have enough time to get it ready, and I haven't heard back from them yet, so that's all that's going on. And if the gentleman at the end needs to know about Mule Creek, just check with us. It's also part of our neighborhood, and we can keep them updated with that whenever I hear anything from them.
Great. Vern?
And we do a joint meeting, Tower Vista with Ellendale, so ditto for.
Ditto. All the pressure on Steve?
So Park Place had their general meeting on the, I think it was the fourth Tuesday, but anyway, well, just last week or so, and we had 40 people there. We had one land use presentation for a 9-home subdivision, and one presentation for the concept plan area, and a large discussion on the concept plan. And we are currently working to have our steering committee presentations for the planning commission whenever that goes forward. Keeps getting put off.
April.
Yeah. Our next meeting will be a steering committee meeting, and that's Monday the 19th. Yes, that is a Monday. Next general meeting won't be till May.
Okay, Mike?
Caulfield, our next meeting is on March 27th, and the main thing on the agenda thus far is a presentation information on activating or reactivating Neighborhood Watch.
Oh, yeah, great. Gaffney Lane, our next meeting is Thursday night, and we have Cindy Smith English coming from the Clackamas Repertoire Theater to give us an update on this season's performances. We have one of the managers coming from Fred Meyer to we're trying to pick a business and have them come tell us about themselves at each of our meetings. We've just started doing this. And so this meeting will be Fred Meyer. In May, Khalifa is coming, so if anybody's interested in that. But we also, Thursday night, we'll have the Fire Station 16 update on their build and how that's going and some of the problems they've run into. We have some concerns ongoing of traffic, so I anticipate that at our meeting I will be asked to go to the next TAC meeting to present some ideas for pedestrian crossings. We did this a couple of years ago and got some new signage on Malala. I think there's some more things we can do while we're waiting for this big grant money to come through. There's some great ideas that we saw in Lincoln City and in Depot Bay, just reminding the pedestrians that it's also their responsibility to get the driver's attentions. And there's these really neat signs that say, hey, basically is, hey, get the driver's attention. Depot Bay actually has, and there's other cities, but that's the one that they have flags that you can grab on one side of the street and wave as you're walking across and stick on the other side. And, just some ideas that we might be able to help fund at a couple intersections that we're really concerned about it by Fred Meyer. So that's what's happening in Gaffney.
Kanema has its next general meeting the April 19th, and the steering committee is yet to be decided. We don't know that time yet. That's my brief report.
Christine?
Just the 3 updates I hear. I'll get you Susan's contact information. I know you have it in her card, but I'll add it about the backyard program and some easy blurbs you can grab to your email. I will provide more information on Chapter 1750, which is the section that talks about how neighborhood association and CIC presentations are made by applicants. So I'll cut out that section so everyone can read and understand at what time do you meet with a neighborhood association. If you can't meet, what do you do? When do you meet with the CIC? So I'll provide that. As well as I'll check in with Katie about the postcards, and maybe there's an extra column we can add to kind of the spreadsheet of get it to me by this date. I promise to get it by this, and we'll see how our conversation with Buell's is. So I'll get feedback on that.
Okay. Also, with when talking with, I was looking on the website and I noticed you updated Dennis and Mike, but when you go to the board members, it shows, like it shows Dennis and it shows Kenema and it says member and it says Karen, it says Rivercrest, and it says vice chair. So
Is
there's
this
like
on the CIC? There's like a plug-in, or is it in the actual neighborhood?
It's on the CIC underneath the officers. It says board members, and then you click on that and it lists the board
Okay,
members. And
I'll check in with Katie because
I think it's a separate.
That's a generated program manager for all boards and commissions. So I'll
Okay.
check in with that.
And then I'm wondering if you could email us the PowerPoint presentations that Laura and Susan did.
Oh, the one that Laura did is actually on your agenda already, but I can do that.
If you could email it, it's
Yeah.
sometimes hard to pull them off of
Yeah.
there.
Okay.
And then on the calendar, on the,
Oh, hold on a second.
sorry, go ahead, write that down. I think we briefly talked about this before, but I'll bring it up again.
Okay, hold on. Okay, a second.
We're gonna keep her busy this time.
No, I just want to make sure I write good enough notes so I don't look back tomorrow and say,
What did I mean by that?
okay, I'm ready. Next
Okay, when I went on the calendar today, on the city's webpage, and it just automatically populates, I think, the calendar, I noticed that some of our neighborhoods, like mine, for instance, is not showing up for this week.
Oh, okay.
And I think that might be how they're put on how they're listed on the website. I think Mike brought that up before. Like it says first Thursday, parentheses, it has some dates, but that might not pull it over
Okay,
to
so
the
how to ensure
calendar.
that neighborhood association meetings are consistent and consistently up on the calendar?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, those are the things that I had for you to follow up.
Okay.
Then did you have anything else for us?
No.
Okay, Commissioner Shaw?
So, last Thursday night, I got invited to speak to the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association. And they wanted to get a little update on what went on in the city in 2017. So I did that, and I'm going to offer that to you also for your neighborhoods if you ever want myself. And if I can't do it, we got another commissioner and stuff to come by and just give you that same presentation. And I did it by department, so Economic Development Department, or the Police Department, and the library, and what all the cool things happened last year, you know. So it was kind of a more uplifting thing, because a lot of the stuff that people are hearing about the city commission or the city is kind of in a negative tone anymore. So I wanted to kind of do that. So I offer that to you guys too, if you'd like me to come to your neighborhood association.
How long was that presentation?
Well, I only had 5 minutes.
I'll give you a little longer than that.
Boom, boom, boom. Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and Tony said he'd tag along with me too. I think he's done this before to your neighborhood.
It's really good. I mean, I went to the planning, their goal setting and whatever that is, the retreat thing that you have.
Yeah, you went to the retreat.
It is
yeah.
so, I mean, because, you know, we hear stuff here and we get you'll get a lot of emails. There's still so much going on. There's no way we can't go to all the meetings and catch up. So if we can't even keep track and we're semi in the loop, imagine what our members are feeling. So yeah, I think that's a great offer. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you for being there too, because that was our mid-biennium retreat. You know that our budget is done for a 2-year duration, and then we'll during the following year we'll have a recap of what happened, kind of mid-year of the budget. So if we wait too long, we get lost in the shuffle there a little bit. So the other thing I had to, and I might have mentioned this the last time, was. You know, this is the Citizen Involvement Committee, and I keep thinking it should be the Citizen Education Committee. Because I keep hearing that, and I think Mr. Mitchell brought that up again tonight, that it's education, education, education. And I think what really drove it home to me is when on the police bond, or the police ballot, where it failed twice, and then the third time it passes by 80%. Now, you know, so that's why it's a little interesting to put things on the ballot. You know, so, because you never know what the education level's gonna be. So I continue to run that up the flagpole here. There's some way, if there's some way we can develop some kind of a program, or whether it's here or something, I think this is a great place to do it at, but to explore ways to educate our citizens.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yeah.
So that's,
I'm adding that reminder on our goals. Okay. Is there anything else that anyone thought of at the last second?
I did just think of something.
Okay, Mike.
So our community communications coordinator, man, is that not a mouthful? Is coming to the May meeting?
May meeting.
Okay, and that fits right in with the first little bullet point under our goal 5, which is now goal 1. And the other thing is city staff will provide a presentation on the role of CIC members and neighborhood associations and their relationship to the city. So could we do that at the May meeting also? Does that?
That gives
Is
us
that-
enough time, yeah.
That's enough
We
time
may not
for
be
you?
able to do it in April, but we can commit to May.
Cool, thank you.
I'll add that on my liaison.
Liaison list. I'll add that to my liaison list. All right, and with that, we are adjourned.
Bye-bye.